Tingles with flyby. Hello my tinglelings, and welcome to another top 10. Today we'll be looking at my top 10 young adult books. So I'd call these probably teenage mainly. I did want to give a shout out to Chassidy and her daughter because she sent me this really lovely message and let me know that her daughter is watching my videos, and so that's kind of why I decided to do the young adult books. Some of them might be a little old for her, but going into the next few years probably be pretty good. So that's what we're going to be looking at today, is the top 10 young adult books that I have. So let's get into it. Number 10 is the series of unfortunate events. So for the top 10, I've just done it based on a series of books. So there are 13 books in the series of unfortunate events. So I've only chosen one book out of the series. This is the first one, but I have I have a couple series in this top 10, but it's the book that I'm showing you is just whatever book I'm showing you. So I'm going to read you the back of this because it'll give you a little bit of the flavor of these books. Dear reader, I'm sorry to say the book you are holding in your hands is extremely unpleasant. It tells an unhappy tale about 3 very unlucky children, even though they are charming and clever children. Oh, the bottler siblings lead lives filled with misery and woe. From the very first page of this book, when the children are at the beach and receive terrible news, continuing on through the entire story, disaster lurks at their heels. One might say they are magnets of misfortune. In this short book alone, the three youngsters encounter a greedy and repulsive villain, itchy clothing, a disastrous fire, a plot to steal their fortune, and cold porridge for breakfast. It is my sad duty to write down these unpleasant tales, but there is nothing stopping you from putting this book down at once and reading something happy, if you prefer that sort of thing. With all due respect, Lemony Snicket. And it's a really clever writing style, and he uses kind of advanced vocabulary, but he'll define the words, but sometimes he defines them in very specific ways for the situation, and so it can be really humorous, and it's just a really fun little style, and he's always kind of trying to get you to stop reading the book, and it's just kind of funny. So that is the first book, The Bad Beginning, the series of unfortunate events, and that is number 10 on my list. Number 9 is Divergent by Veronica Roth. So this is probably a little bit of an older type book, but it's still young adult. It is a dystopian novel So they have these 5 factions. This is actually the book that I've chosen for my very first book club, which is going to be October 8th. I will put a link down in the description to the announcement video for that, so you can get all the details on the book club. But this is Divergent's really interesting book. Don't want to give too much away since we are reading it for book club. But it's about a girl, and so they have these 5 factions in kind of this post-apocalyptic society, and you have to choose kind of which faction you go to. And so they have Abnegation, who are the most selfless, and that's where she grows up, and then you have Candor, who value the truth above all else, and they have different things that kind of identify themselves, like the way they dress and different things. So it's a really interesting concept, and of course with any dystopian there's always an undercurrent of something sus going on. This is a series of 3 books, and it was made into a movie. I haven't seen the movie. Probably will after book club. I don't want it to mar my thoughts, but yeah, so I'm excited for that. But yeah, it's a really interesting book, really well written as well. Really like Veronica Roth. So that is Divergent. Number 8. Is Silver by Norma Fox. I don't actually have a copy of this book. I couldn't get one from the library here. I looked for it. They don't have one neither at my university nor at the public library. I do have a copy. My dad has it. He still has all my stuff from when I was 17 and moved out, so anyway, that's the next, I think, 3 books I don't actually have a copy of, but I will put up a picture of them so you can see what the cover looks like. But Silver is just kind of a realistic fiction novel. It's about a girl who lives in a trailer park, but then her school gets rezoned so that she gets thrown into this kind of really wealthy neighborhood, into that school. And so it's just kind of about what she has to grapple with and kind of the things that she has to deal with going into this environment and finding, these people and thinking, oh, they have everything and it's good, but then, finding out the problems that they still have. And so it's a really interesting book, really good. I've read it probably 10 times. I read it a lot of times because I started reading it when I was a kid, and I've just read it and read it and read it. So really interesting book, and now that I'm talking about it, I really want to read it again. So highly recommend that. It's just really relatable and kind of just makes you think about, kind of broadening your mind and how seeing other people in their humanity and all that. So that is number 8. Is A Murder for Her Majesty by Beth Hillgardner. Now, I remember when I found this book, I had, if you've watched my life story video, I lived 1 year in New York, my year I was in 7th grade, and it was our first time at the library at that school, and So I picked up this book called A Murder for Her Majesty. And it's about this girl, and she's the daughter of kind of a wealthy man. Her mother had died, and then her father has just died. And so she is going into an orphanage. Is it orphanage? Something like an orphanage. And it's all about her then uncovering kind of plots and working her way in and, you know, finding out what's kind of going on. And there's some fun little plot to this as well, because she actually, she's not going to an orphanage. She ran away because after her dad died, then she was worried they were going to kill her because somebody killed her dad. Okay, I'm forgetting what's going on. And so she runs away, and she pretends to be a boy. So she actually goes to this choir school, and so these boys take her in off of the streets, but they know that the choir director and all that won't let her stay because she's a girl, and so she cuts her hair and pretends to be a boy. So that's the whole big thing, is that she has a secret that she's the boy. So anyway, it's really fun, kind of, you know, living as a, you know, kind of a spy type. I mean, it's not spy, but it's young. She's, I don't know, I think she's 8 or 9, so it's really young. It's pretty light on besides the murder themes. I mean, it's called A Murder for Her Majesty, but it's pretty chill, and it's a really fun book. So I've read that one a lot of times, and it's really good. So if you can get your hands on it, highly recommend it. It's a great book. Number 6. Is The People of Pineapple Place. And this is such a fun book. It's like, just thinking about it right now, my mind is ooh. So this boy lives in a town, and then he sees someone, and he sees her kind of disappear down this street that he hasn't seen before. And so basically there is this invisible street that kind of moves around. It's kind of got this sci-fi fantasy type feel, but it's like but kind of realistic fiction. So it's kind of got just tiny little elements of that, but more so a realistic fiction feel with just a tiny little edge. So and it's just really interesting. It's a really fun little society. There is another one, The Prisoner in Pineapple Place, as well, which is the sequel. But it's just a really fun book, and you get to, because it's this little street, and so I think there's about 6 or 7 houses there, so they all know each other really well because they move together, and they don't know where they're going to be, and they have to kind of pick things out of the garbage because they can't go out and buy things because people can't see them. But there's like 1 or 2 of them that can be seen, so they go out and basically kind of, they call it, one of them is the bag lady, and the bag lady goes through the bins and picks out little pieces of string, and so they have these sweaters that are made out of string, you know, like yarn, just little pieces of yarn that they've been able to get out of the garbage, and so really multicolored. So there's just lots of fun little details like that, and it's just such a fun idea to explore. So that's why I've made that number 6. Is And Ender's Game. This is the first in a series, though the main character is only kind of young adult age in the first book. This I got from the library. I have to tell you this because I hate it, but this is a reprinted version. They actually changed the name of one of the characters. That really bugs me. But anyway, I won't tell you who it is, so I can't ruin it for you. But yeah, it's a really interesting book. It's set in the future, and basically the idea is that aliens have come 2 times to come and invade Earth, and then they're worried that they're going to come a 3rd time, so they are preparing for basically a space war. And so all the Earth is kind of coming together, and they've got this idea that children are the best at being able to fight wars. I don't know, it's kind of an interesting premise when you state it that way. But so they send them up to battle school, and in battle school they learn all about battle and that sort of thing. And it's a really interesting book. It's a little bit really psychological. You kind of get into the mind of the character, who is Ender, and just you kind of get to see him grow up and the changes that he goes through. And so it's a really interesting book. This series is a bit different, but I won't go into why, because I don't want to give anything away. But I did want to show you, this is the 4th book in the series, and this one I brought with me. I only brought a few books when I came over to Australia, and this was one, because it's my favorite book in the series. You can see it's quite well worn. And I actually got like 20 of my Orson Scott Card books signed, but this one he actually wrote out to me. So, Jenny, suffer the virtual children. And then it's signed by the author. So, that was a pretty fun night. It was when one of the Shadow of the Giant came out, I think. Don't remember exactly. But anyway, so the Ender's Game series is number 5. Number 4 is Artemis Fowl by Ian Colfer. These books are so fun. So the idea is, Artemis Fowl is a human, and he's very wealthy. He's a child of a very wealthy family. And so he has some problem. I don't remember what the particular problem is in this book, but he discovers the fairy world, which I think is down in underground. Don't remember exactly where, but so he discovers the fairy world, and so he traps a fairy, and is basically wants the fairy to help him with his problem. But he's not really a very likable person, and the fairy is, and so it's really fun. But it's kind of got a modern edge, so it's not just like a magical fairy, it's kind of a techno fairy. So they have like these, like the fairy names are acronyms, so they're acronyms for some high tech that they have. And so it's really kind of a fun concept. And so you get to see like concepts of fairies, but it's kind of reimagined. But it's really fun. And yeah, I'll just read you the back. Stay back, human. You don't know what you're dealing with. 12-year-old Artemis Fowl is a brilliant criminal mastermind. But even Artemis doesn't know what he's taken on when he kidnaps a fairy. Captain Holly Short of the LEP Recon Unit. These aren't the fairies of bedtime stories. These fairies are armed and they're dangerous. Artemis thinks he's gotten them just where he wants them, but then they stop playing by the rules. So, it's very fun. Highly recommend. That's why it's number 4. Number 3. Is the Little Prince. Those who've been with me since the beginning of the year probably would have guessed that we had to include the Little Prince in there. This is one of my all-time favorite books, and it could probably sway a little bit younger than young adult, but it's really a book for all ages. It's an amazing, amazing book. And I did a series of videos reading it, so if you can't get your hands on it and you want to hear me reading it to you, then go check those out, because I really love this book. It's a book about life. It's very philosophical, but it's very story-like. Like, it's not deep philosophy. It's really dense. It's very light and easy. It's childlike, but very profound. Just has so much meaning and just resonates so much with me. It's about this pilot. He gets wrecked in the middle of the desert, and he finds this little prince there. And it's kind of finding out, well, how did this child end up just in the middle of the desert, thousands of miles away from any inhabited territory? So it's a really, really just touching book. It's so good. You should definitely read it or watch my videos of it, because it's an amazing book. So that's number 3. Number 2 is, can you guess? Well, I don't think that we could go this far in a young adult video without mentioning Harry Potter. I love Harry Potter, as so many do. It's actually funny, well, anyway, this is obviously the last book, and this book is very precious to me. I got offered $100 when I was walking out of the shop to give it for somebody to buy this from me, so they didn't have to wait in line. And I turned them flat down. I wanted to get home and read this book. I camped out tonight to get this copy. So, I was so happy with that. But, Harry Potter, what can you say? I assume most people know the premise of Harry Potter, so I won't go into that, but I will tell my little story. Because I'm kind of a person who doesn't like things that get too hyped, and usually if things get too hyped, I don't like them because they're too hyped. So I kind of thought, Harry Potter, no. It was around when the 3rd book had come out, and it was big, and everyone was like, oh, Harry Potter's so amazing. And I was like, no, not Harry Potter. And so my sister had been with me on this. We're like, oh yeah, no, Harry Potter. But then somehow she read the books, and she's like, no, they're really good. Jenny, you should read them. They're really good. And I still wouldn't. So what she did, very clever, she got the first 2 books, and then she wrote in pen in them a little note to me, and then gave them to me for Christmas. So she knew if she'd written in them that I couldn't return them, and she also probably wouldn't get rid of them, so I might actually read them. So pretty clever, and it worked, and I read them, fell in love, and, you know, the rest is history. So Harry Potter had to be on this list, and so it's number 2. So I have 3 honorable mentions. I was only able to get my hands on one of them. A second one is again in my dad's house. And the third one I just can't get in a library here. I got it from the library in the States when I read it. So we'll go first with the one I have here. This is Dealing with Dragons by Patricia C. Reed. Just a fun little book. I'm just going to read you the back. Meet Princess Cimmerine, a princess who refuses to be proper. She is everything a princess is not supposed to be. Headstrong, tomboyish, smart, and bored. So bored that she runs away to live with a dragon. And not just any dragon, but Kazul, one of the most powerful and dangerous dragons around. Cimmerine has a way of hooking up with dangerous characters, and soon she's coping with a witch, a djinn, a death-dealing talking bird, a stone prince, and some very oily wizards. If this princess ran away to find some excitement, it looks like she's found plenty. So, you can probably get an idea from that. It's a pretty fun book. The second honorable mention is Enchantress from the Stars. It's a really fascinating concept for a book. So the concept, it's a kind of sci-fi and fantasy book married together, and it's fascinating. So you have it written kind of chapter by chapter from either perspective. So the perspective is that you have this kind of spaceship coming on to this particular planet. And so the spaceship, obviously, that's all high tech. They can do travel all around the universe, whatever. But then, and they also have mastered being able to do mind, like levitation and that sort of thing. But so they use those things then in a fantasy context, because the society that they're going to, they don't want them to know about technology yet, basically, but they're trying to intervene with what's going on there. And so then from that perspective, it's written kind of in this magical, mystical way of, learning how to do these magical things. And so it's a really interesting contrast to kind of see how those two genres work together. So, really fun book. Third honorable mention is Daphne's book. It's by Mary Downing Hahn, who, when I was a kid, I devoured everything that she wrote. She was I grew up in Maryland, and she was a local Maryland author, and just had so many fascinating books, but probably my favorite was Daphne's book. Daphne's book is about this girl who gets paired up with kind of this uncool girl to work on a project, and it just kind of talks about the relationship that they form as they work on this project and how she gets to understand Daphne better, and it's just kind of a really good book. She also has some really interesting kind of ghost type books. That one doesn't really have a ghost slant, but she has a few that are like that, and those are fun as well. So, highly recommend Mary Downing Hahn. So, those are our honorable mentions. So, drumroll please. Is The Giver. If we thought Harry Potter had to be included, I think we all knew The Giver had to be included as well. This is such a well-known book and well-loved, and to me just a really impactful book. And I read it when I was in, I want to say I know I read it in 8th grade, but I think I had already read it. I think I might have first read it in 5th grade. I don't remember exactly, but just such a mind-opening book. Really makes you think, and again, kind of a, dystopian type of society, although it doesn't really present itself as a dystopian society. It's supposed to be, a very utopian society. Oh, everything works well, everything functions. And then you kind of get to see the man behind the curtain and find out what's actually going on. So, very good book. It's amazing. I assume most people my age have read it, but to all the younger generations, if you haven't read it, even if you're my age, definitely worth reading. Because, I think it's one of the best young adult books. So that is why it's number 1. So there we have it. That's our, just set that down. That's our top 10. If you think I missed anything, let me know down in the comments. And I still am looking for votes on my top 10 videos. So put your votes down in the comments. I might try and set up something on Facebook, do a poll, check the description, otherwise just put it in the comments, and so that's my top 10. Any requests for future top 10s, put them in the comments as well, and if you disagree, I'm always up for a good fight about books, and if you do read any of the books based on that, let me know how you like them, and we will see you tomorrow. Goodbye, my tinglelings. Thanks for watching.